Thank you so much for joining us here at The Research Her, the show working to improve the health disparities for women of color, one topic at a time. I am Alicia. I'm here learning and growing with you as we research our way to well-being. Hey! On this episode, we will be talking to Allante Whitmore, who is the host and creator of Blk In Grad School, which is a podcast that I love it. I love it, been loving it. And she is originally from Detroit, where she lived for a while before attending college at North Carolina A&T to study biological engineering. She then went to get a master's in biological and agricultural engineering at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She then moved back to back to Detroit and led the McNair Scholars Program at Wayne State University for a couple of years. And then she began to pursue her Ph.D. It's a joint Ph.D. in civil engineering and public policy at Carnegie Mellon University. Her research focuses on uncovering the environmental and social implications of autonomous vehicle technology. And when she's not studying, she is curating her podcast. And the podcast is geared towards helping people of color in graduate school figure it out. So with that, let's get into the conversation with Allante. We have Allante in the building. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. I'm so excited to be on Researcher podcast. I'm happy. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. So I'm going to start with our icebreaker questions. So the first one, what celebrity are you supposed to be best friends with?
Oh my gosh. Okay. My answer is Tracy G. She's a co-host on Sway in the Morning, but she's also a mindfulness millennial guru and really all about self-love and self-care and like everything that she comes out with, every email, everything, like every post, I just resonate with it so much. And so in my head, that is my homie.
Okay. That's cool. Cause you probably, every time she sends something like, oh, okay. And especially you on everything, you like, yes, got my inbox from my bestie.
Yes.
Yeah. So the next question is, what is your ratchet pleasure?
So my mom and I watched Real Housewives of Atlanta faithfully together every single week. Usually by the time we talk on Monday, now that I don't have cable on Tuesday, we are recapping the last episode. And it's great mother bonding ratchet time. It's just all the things put in one.
Yes, I love it. And if you could break the law one time, what would you do?
What? Probably rob a bank so I can get some money.
We're going to get into it. We're warmed up. We're ready. So, yes. Did you always know that you would pursue a career in STEM, or was that just like shocking for you too?
Well, I wish I could say it was slightly shocking, but like I think to this extent is more of the shock than like this. So I'm from Detroit, so I'm from the Motor City. My name is Allante. It is a car, actually. It's a Cadillac convertible from the 80s and the early 90s. And now I work on autonomous vehicle stuff, research. And so my mother, since I've been a child, has said I was going to be an engineer. She's going to be on the A plan so she can get a discount on a nice car. That is how she has spoken into my life. I mean, literally, I don't even know another job my mother has ever considered for me. And so I resisted it for a while until I found research, and in the arena of research is what I've really been drawn to. So like, yeah, but I don't think that I thought I was going to be doing this because my mom was like not having it. I was going to be an engineer.
Got it. I mean, but okay, you're still an engineer though. So
I am.
Yes.
For sure.
Okay, so tell us about your undergrad experiences. Was there any experience that like really shaped your path and like inspired you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So after my sophomore year, it's so funny. I wrote my when I wrote my personal statement, I put I experienced my classes with waves of enthusiasm, right? So like sometimes I was enthusiastic and sometimes I was not. And one particularly unenthusiastic semester led me to summer school. And my mama was like, I'm not paying for any of your classes. I already paid for them for the spring semester.
Oh, she sound like my mama.
I'm happy to know I ain't get the only mama like that. That's good to know. It's hilarious. So she told me she was not paying for my classes. So I went to my advisor's like office boo-hooing, like, I don't have no money and I gotta stay here take summer classes. And he's like, don't worry, we'll take care of everything for you. So I have to also always shout out my beloved alma mater, North Carolina A&T State University, because they looked out for your girl, okay? He paid for my classes and gave me a part-time job in the research lab. And I thought I was going to be just like shuffling papers, not really doing anything, just making a little money to sustain myself throughout the summer. But I really loved the research I was doing. I loved the pace of research. I liked the fact that I was creating new knowledge. And I was like, oh, I could do this. I could do this as a career. Like, what do I do? And literally, I'm at lunch one day and I said, what do I do to do this full time? They're like, you could be in the lab forever if you finish with your bachelor's, but you can get a PhD, you can lead projects. I'm like, okay. And that was it. That has led my trajectory to this point.
You're at this HBCU, you got inspired to at some point like pursue research, and now you're transitioning from being at a HBCU to now you're going to go pursue a master's, or you're going to move past and go to a graduate program. So how was it transitioning from HBCU to, okay, what school am I going to go to next?
Right. Admittedly, once I got to my master's program, it was not easy. So, like I said, I'm from Detroit. Like some people, if you meet other folks from Detroit, it'd be like, are you from the city or are you from the suburbs? Like, I'm from the city. And so my high school was 98% Black. Then I went to HBCU. I grew up with this, in this mostly Black bubble. And I get to University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where I completed my master's degree. And it was like legit culture shock because I hadn't been the only Black person in so long that I just was like, what is this? I feel like that was really my first experience in remembering that life is not like an HBCU or Detroit, and those places are special and to be appreciated. But like, I don't hide the fact that I really struggled with transitioning. I think there are some distinct differences in how students overall, like regardless of their racial or ethnicity, like how they identify, are treated at a PWI versus an HBCU. I think there's a lot more of a collaborative spirit at HBCUs. Like, we all gonna make it, we're all gonna get through. And I just did not have that experience in my master's program. Like, I had a hard time finding study groups. I had challenges, just like kind of just even on the social side, getting along with people. And it wasn't that I feel like I was some like bad student or like mean or rude or anything. I just kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. Like, I was the only Black person there. And if you hear my voice, it's like, like, she Black.
She black. She black.
And so, I admit I just really, really struggled. And it wasn't that I felt underprepared academically, because I definitely knew that I could compete with my cohort members and my classmates on the academic side, but socially I really floundered.
So did you pursue UIUC as a master's program? I listened to the podcast, so Blk In Grad School. So did you pursue UIUC as a PhD program or as a master's program? And can you talk a little bit more about that experience?
Sure. So I was admitted in a master's PhD program through SURGE, which is the Student and Underrepresented Graduate in Engineering, something. So, it was a fully funded program targeted towards women and people of color coming to U of I. And so I committed to doing my master's and PhD at that university. But after I finished my master's, really, once I finished my second year, I started to think, like, is this really where I want to stay? A lot of things happened. I lost the project that I was working on. I used to do genetic engineering work in making cells more hardy for biofuel production was the application I was interested in. So that work lost its funding. So I was put onto a new project that I had zero interest in. I was dealing with some microaggressions and some explicit racism during my time there. And then, yeah, those two honestly just made me really unhappy. And so I left.
Okay, I went to UIUC for undergrad, right? So,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh.
So I wonder, like, what was your experience with the advising while you were as a graduate student, so as a master's student? How do you feel like you were guided? Like, because I know what my experience was. I won't share here.
Okay.
This is for
I
you
got you.
to share your experience. But how do you feel you were guided? Do you think that they properly handled your situation and you and appreciated you as a student?
You know, I would just argue that they didn't. You know, I just frankly, but they didn't, but not, I don't think it's from a pure, because I don't want to say like, I feel like there's like willful ignorance that's part of it, and then there is like true ignorance, right? Like just a lack of understanding and knowing. And so I think it was a combination of the two that contributed to like the university just being a space that does not know how to support its students of color well. You know, like it has certain things in place. Like there's a program called SPI, which is called Summer Predoctoral Institute, which I didn't do until my second summer, because since I wasn't technically a doctoral student yet, I was able to apply for a second summer, and I needed that so much prior to my first year. You know, it was like almost too late by the time I had access to that space. So I would just say that like Illinois specifically, there's a lot of space for growth there, and I know they like to like have a lot of students. I don't know if you were there during the Inclusive Illinois campaign, which is like while I was there. You were?
So I was there from 2011 to 15.
Oh, we did at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so yes.
So, yeah. You know, I feel like it's a great alliteration, but its execution there's a lot of space for improvement. Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't even imagine being an undergrad there. But at the same breath, at least it's like 100 of y'all versus it's like 30 of us at the grad level. Yeah.
So I also wonder, like, just to kind of ask you a little bit more about coming from down south to Illinois. Is it different from Detroit and from North Carolina as well?
Yes. I mean, the South is so warm. I mean, it's just warmth, you know, just think of like an older Black woman's bosom is just how the South is, right? Like the warmth that Southerners have. And so it was like, I kind of forgot like, oh yeah, I'm back in the Midwest. But once I kind of got back into the swing of things, then there's a familiarity and a warmth of the Midwest disposition that I love, you know, as a fellow Midwesterner. So I mean, that part for me wasn't like a big deal. Like, oh yeah, people don't say hi when you walk in the door. They don't speak to you. But like, I was used to that from being at home. One funny thing though about being in Illinois, in North Carolina, if I met a guy and I wasn't into him immediately, I could just look at him and be like, I'm from Detroit, with a like straight face, kind of looking like, don't mess with me, you know? And dudes are like, oh, she from like Detroit girls are crazy. Like they not no Southern girls, so I'm gonna just leave her alone, you know. And admittedly, I dated like way more guys from up north than I did in the South while I was down there. So you know, like because Southern folks was like, ooh, Detroit girls crazy. But so I had gotten accustomed to that. So I get to Illinois,
and they used to them Chicago girls.
Right. I'm like, I'm from Detroit. Like, oh, I'm from this Chicago. It's whatever. I'm like, oh, right. Yeah, this don't work here. Okay, I gotta find something new to like back people off immediately. But it was really funny because dude did not care. Like, oh, I'm from Chicago. Great.
This is gonna work out. We can make this work.
Right. We could be crazy together. Like, oh no, leave me alone.
Yeah. So now with all the knowledge that you have about like, you know, your experience with your grad and undergrad, what do you feel you would change to better like prepare for your PhD?
Yeah. I think the first thing I would change is just like access to like this almost hidden curriculum or this like unspoken rules of grad school, like just access to that information. Because I think if I knew that, then I would just be more prepared and I wouldn't have had such a hard time transitioning and getting acclimated to the environment. So that's what I kind of just felt like was missing. I'm like, why didn't anyone just pull me aside, and say, hey, this, and this is probably going to happen. And this is how you handle it, right? Or this is a way for you to think about it when it does happen. And that's what I really just wished that I had. And I don't even think that the people at my HBCU were thinking about that, because they don't have to do it. They don't have to even think about those types of things in that space. Even I know that we were leaving and going elsewhere. And then when I get to these new places, these new schools, they don't have the skill set completely, and they don't always have the desire to create like the safest of spaces. They just create something that's good enough and they move forward. So that is like really the thing that I wish there was something be outside of like the universities that was supporting me and helping me to be prepared.
Mm-hmm. So what inspired you to continue to get the PhD after finishing your master's?
Yeah. So after my master's, I spent 3 years running a McNair Scholars Program in Detroit, Michigan at Wayne State University. And I loved my job. But I was literally sending people off to get PhDs all day. Like that was my job, was to get my students to grad school. And so, I'm telling them about all of the things they can expect and how important and that it is that they finish, not only for themselves, but for like the community and all of this. And I was like, here I am telling everybody else to go get a PhD. And that is something that I know I want to do. And like the job not only reinforced my love for teaching and I believe my gift for teaching, but also for research and for higher education, because I couldn't do research while I was working. I actually ended up volunteering at University of Michigan for a summer just because I missed it. And that's how I knew, like, this is the career for me, because I miss research. I miss creating new knowledge. And I'm willing to literally do it for free and drive 45 minutes each way to spend a couple hours a week doing research.
Wow. Did you feel any pressure from your family to continue on as well, or it was just all internal?
I mean, my mom has always been super duper supportive. But one thing that she did say to me when I was down in Illinois, she's like, just hold your breath 5 years, Allanté, and you'll have your PhD. And I was like, I did feel a tinge of like her being concerned that I wouldn't go back when I started working. She never said it out loud, but you could feel people's energy. Like, she nervous. I know, it's okay. Like, I know you're nervous, Mom. So like while that was present, she has raised me, and I've always been on my own, just someone who like I have to do what's best for me, and this is my life. And so I didn't go back and didn't consider it until I knew I was ready to think about and consider doing it, So even though she didn't say anything, I felt it, but I ignored it until I was ready to go back to school.
Okay. And you're at work. How was the application process for you? Did you go to a school that required that you like took the GRE, and did you just like reuse the scores from your master's? Like, how was applying for the PhD for you?
Yeah, so this was a part of it. Like, if I'm supposed to go to grad school, I'm not taking the GRE again. I took it once back in, like, I'm for real, 2012, I took it. So my scores expired on January 1st, 2017. All my applications were due December 31st, 2016. So I submitted all of them. And I was like, if I don't get in, I'm not taking a GRE again. And I'm just not going to go back to school. So God, shout out to God for holding me down.
God holding you down.
Yes, it really did. But the rest of the process was pretty straightforward. The application, get your transcripts in, recommendations. I've always made a point to maintain good relationships with the faculty that I worked with. Like when I go down to homecoming, I try to go like a half a day early so I can go to my old building and say hello to everybody in person. I still even keep in contact with my former advisor at Illinois as well. So I try to make sure I kept those relationships alive so they always could write me good recommendations.
Okay. And that's important. That's an important little nugget for someone to take away is you don't only want to build them while you're present in their face every day, but also finding a way of staying connected throughout the years leading up to, especially if you're going back to school.
Exactly.
So you got into the PhD program, and how is it for you? You're taking classes and doing research like from jump,
Yeah.
like from year one, or is it you do classes and then, research later?
Right. No, around here we hit the ground running. Like my advisor sent me books over the summer to read to prepare for the fall. So by the time I got here, I was familiarizing myself with my new field. So like I told you before, I used to do genetic engineering work at A&T and at Illinois. Then I took 3 years off doing nothing. And now I work on autonomous vehicle technology work. And so I've made such a pivot. And also like my bachelor's and master's degrees in biological engineering. And now I'm in civil engineering and engineering and public policy. So I like have just really done such a big jump. I had to just like get familiar with the space that I was entering and the research that I was entering. So that has been like, I just have been doing research in classes pretty much I started in fall 2017 up until now. Because I'm in a joint PhD program, I had 2 qualifying exams. So I completed one. Seriously, it was a struggle. I completed one actually after my first semester because I already had a master's degree. That is the convention at the university. So, in our department. So I did the civil qualifying exam last January. And then this January 2019, I completed my second set of qualifying exams for engineering and public policy. So it was a pretty heavy 2 years. And I have like 2 or 3 more classes left. And I'm proposing either in the fall or spring. So I'm really about probably like 12 months from ABD.
Nice. So nice. So you spoke a lot about like what you're doing and everything. So what is civil, because you spoke like civil engineering, what is civil engineering? There are different types of engineering, but
right. So civil engineers, it's kind of like, I almost think of it, even when I was undergrad, I was like, that's the generic engineering field. Because you can do and I said it because you can do so much with a civil engineering degree. So like here at CMU, we have like 3 kind of different disciplines. We have energy and environmental sciences. So looking at like climate change as it relates to like transportation or being resilient. We also have AIS, which is Advanced Infrastructure Systems. So then we look at like how we can implement like better traffic demand strategies or create better policies or like traffic flow and combat congestion, all this kind of stuff. And then I'm actually drawing a blank on the last one, so I don't remember.
Okay,
but
no worries.
That was
good.
Yeah, those 2. I mean, those are transportation heavy, but you can like be on a whole different field looking at bridges and like even like cement formulas. Like we have like an entire group that literally only looks at airport pavement. Like that is a whole big subfield that has like its own conferences and lots of information. So it really runs the gamut as it relates to civil engineering. You could pick a topic and then civil engineering is probably somehow related to it.
Got it. How did you choose your current research advisor?
I had a visit to the campus and I interviewed with like 4 people. And when I met him, let me say this, I have 4 advisors. So I have a primary advisor, and then because I'm in 2 programs, I have pretty much 2 of them are in one department and 2 are in the other department. So when I met my primary advisor, we had a discussion. He told me the topic that he was kind of like had funding in, which was this autonomous vehicle research area. And honestly, he just had he was just really cool. Like his energy was like nice. Like this is a good person. Because I haven't had the best experiences with my advisor before. Like, not that my advisor before was like terrible, but like he just wasn't the greatest. I don't know how to put it. So I knew kind of what to look out for as far as like what I didn't want in an advisor. And so, I talked to him about like his style, as far as his advising style. And I also got to talk to his other students, which I think are our school does a pretty good job of like, because I've talked to quite a few students that ended up coming or not coming here, is you get to talk to someone who's like a little bit less biased, you know, because you're talking to a fellow student versus just the advisor, and they can give you a more realistic glimpse of what it's like to work with him. And I don't need micromanagement, but I do need consistency as far as meeting. And so that aligned for us. And then honestly, when I started doing my own research into the topic, I was like, there's so much opportunity for me in this field. Autonomous vehicle technology is definitely emerging. And I'll be on the front end of it as one of those kind of first experts in the space. And I think it's very important that there are people who are Black in this space on the front end of it. Yeah. And so it just almost felt like a no-brainer because everything was in place. Like the school only admits you if they have funding. He seemed like he was a good advisor, and I knew he wasn't going to be my only advisor. Mm-hmm. And so just to give you a little bit of information about my other advisors, one is an emeritus professor and the other has been at the university like almost 40 years. And so I liked that he was newer. He's still tenure track, like still earning tenure, while the other have tenure, so they therefore have like the political power. They know all those things too. And then my fourth advisor, she actually lives in California, but like it was just also good to have like a woman's presence, a part of my like group, and she does stuff that I have no skill set in. So like she brought a lot of skills in that I needed. So the combination of them, I feel like I had like a dream team. Like I have new and old. You got both departments are covered, and it just really felt like I was going to be well supported. If like one person dropped the ball, there's only 3 other people, to pick it up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so outside of your 4 advisors, do you still have a committee, or?
I'm very fortunate. My committee is picked out because I have 4 advisors.
Okay, I was gonna say, now that room is basically a group. Like y'all are a whole research group in y'allself. Okay.
Yeah, no, right? No. Every now and then someone finds out I have 4 advisors, like, and they all come to the meetings every week. I'm like, yeah. They're like, how do you handle that? I'm like, you just do it.
And I was gonna ask that next. So how is it keeping up with 4 people? I have 2 advisors, and it's very hard. Yeah. How do you keep up with 4?
Right. So one, like I said, I have great advisors here. Like I have to, that's where it starts. Like they're good advisors. And of course they all have varying levels of interaction or like being super hands-on with me. So the main thing is they respond to emails. Like I'm grateful for that. And they also, when we have conversations or there's discussion or there's contention, I just put it on the table and we just talk it out. And they all get along relatively well. And everyone, if there is a disagreement, like it's explained why, and then we decide whatever the final decision is going to be together. And if someone misses that meeting, then they obviously lose their voice in that particular situation. And they also take that without being nasty about it. It's like, oh, okay, well, I missed that meeting. So that's what I decided. I'm with whatever the group thinks is best. I'm okay with that. So one is the fact that everyone works really well together because they already had relationships prior to me coming in as their student. Yeah, actually, that's really just it, that everyone works really well together. So I don't have a lot of challenges, but I will tell you when it's time to edit and do revisions, it's a pain because I'm waiting for 4 people and they have 4 different opinions about how things should be read. That part I am not as crazy about. Like I literally just submitted a paper for final revisions before we started our call. And I'm like, oh, I know this is going to be more than a doozy because it's 4 people. Like it's just going to be more because it's 4 people that are checking the papers. Yeah.
And so speaking of papers, that means you had to have done research. So tell us about your research.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know I've mentioned it a couple times, but what I look at specifically are the societal and environmental impacts of autonomous vehicle deployment. And so thinking about when we finally have AVs on the road, they're not just being tested and we have access to them. What I've looked at are what are our ethical responsibilities as engineers to making sure that AVs don't just fuck up our world. And then the second paper that I worked on was looking at how public transit agencies can harness autonomous vehicle technology to improve transit service. So looking at where low income minority populations exist in the city, looking at their transit access. If they have adequate access, then okay. But if they don't have adequate access, how can we improve access in an inexpensive manner, because they need to have access? Because transportation is actually one of the key factors in upward mobility. If you have access to transit, you are more likely to be able to leave low income to medium income brackets. So that's something that I never realized. Being from Detroit, everyone drives a car, but as I've grown and I've explored this area, it's really important that we all have equitable access and adequate access to transit, be it a personal vehicle or public transit, so that we can literally improve our lives. And so I look at that. And then I also am hoping to explore when we start using shared autonomous mobility, not you driving your own autonomous vehicle, but, you almost doing an Uber pool with autonomous vehicles, how we can also create a cleaner and more sustainable environment by having fewer oil, lower emissions, lower air pollution, noise pollution, etc., and how that might affect. And as I look in low income and minority populations and communities, how that might affect air quality in a Black neighborhood, where a lot of Black neighborhoods actually deal with the most air and noise pollution compared to other groups. So that's kind of what I work on. And it's been really fulfilling work in the last 2 years.
Did you look into whether there is less access in certain neighborhoods over others in these cities that you looked at?
Yeah, so I looked at the county that I live in now, which is Allegheny County, and the Port Authority of Allegheny County does a really good job with its transit access. The access is not significantly lower for low income and minority populations. That's not a main factor in the likeliness of a neighborhood not having access. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand. Okay. So why would the emissions be improved by autonomous vehicles?
Right. Well, I should have said autonomous and electric vehicles, because that is really, to me, the best way to release these vehicles is if they are also electrified, which means we're no longer even using gasoline.
Okay. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting that would improve that. Yeah. But okay.
But if we didn't, there still is some fuel efficiency that would take place, because human drivers, we accelerate and decelerate in a non-optimal way. So an AV can decelerate and accelerate in a more optimal way, which therefore does provide fuel efficiency. And then also, if we don't have congestion anymore, because the vehicles maintain speed versus us speeding and stopping and slowing down, speeding up, slowing down, that'll also create a more smooth traffic flow, which will also provide fuel savings.
Okay. And I know that this is outside of what you would probably research, but maybe you know a little bit more about it. How is the public and people responding to AVs? Are people okay with it, or is it a lot of pushback? Because I just know we don't like change, not big change. So do you know if people are not really feeling this idea?
Yeah, so I mean, I've read a couple of articles probably back in 2017. So I would argue that people are probably a little bit more open to it now than they were two or 3 years ago. However, on average, people are very skeptical, for sure. But our generation, millennials and the generation behind us, are no longer the generation behind us. I think a lower percentage of them even have a license, right? And so since they don't even have a license, they're going to be the early adopters, because they're shoot, I can get around for $2 versus $4 on Uber. I'm about to ride this thing, And then I think the same for our millennials. I do believe I am this is probably gonna be the last car I own, the one that I have right now. And then I'm gonna just be riding in Ubers and scooting around and shared AVing it, in the future. So even though granted, I think older generations and generation ahead of us, my mom, they're probably gonna be very late to adopting it, but I do think that in the next, I'd say 15 years, 20 years, that AVs will really be common.
Okay.
Not everywhere, but like a common thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your research is really cool.
Oh,
And you,
thank you.
yeah, it is. And like, you are a Black woman doing this. Like, I just love that you are represented in this field, because it's just, one, not common to see a Black woman engineer, let alone someone working in am I supposed to say automation?
Autonomous.
Yes.
Autonomous.
Thank you. I'm like, not my field. Thank you. So
yeah, I mean, literally almost all of my presentations, I'm trying to think. I think I've had one presentation so far where there was another Black woman in the room. And I've presented probably like 6 or 7 times now. Most of the time I'm presenting to a room of white men, which is like hilarious because they're like loving, you know, they're interested in the work. And it's like, I'm the only Black person in this room.
So how is it being the only Black person? Well, specifically at your university, I looked on the page, and I was like, it looked like she the only Black person in this whole department. Like, am I right or am I not right?
So there is a Black male PhD student. He came this year. So there's 2 of us now. But last year I was the only Black person in the PhD program. I think there were like a couple master students, but I hadn't had the opportunity to meet them. So what is my experience like? Well, now I'm used to it, right? Because I was at Illinois and I was the only Black face in my everything, you know? And so I just know it's par for the course at this point, even though I don't wish it was that way. And so I feel like what I end up spending my free time doing is thinking about ways for this just to not be the case anymore. Like, that's all I really want. Like, I just don't want this to be the case. That's, you know, like, I just wish there was one other Black person I could look over to, or at least 2 other Black people I could look over to and be like, hey, I'm just happy to see you in class. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes. Let's study.
So yeah, that's really, I think, what I think about. And as an HBCU grad, like, what I do understand is that a lot of, like, I think, like, HBCUs are where most Black PhDs come from. I think, like, I don't know the number, I don't want to misquote, but it's definitely more than 50%, right? And that means that most of us end up at PWIs, which is not a problem at all. But the point being is, I recognize that HBCUs are an incubator for Black higher, like Black advanced degree recipients. And so I really hope to go back and be like a dean of engineering or some administrative level like that, where I can help facilitate that pipeline and widen the pipeline and send more students to these schools, but not send them one by one.
So are you saying, like, at HBCU or at a PWI you would want to go?
I want to work at an HBCU right now. Honestly, even like where I want to work, like, that is such a loaded question right now, because like I said, there's so many opportunities in the space I work in. So I don't know what that will look like, but I do know ultimately at some point I want to be in an HBCU, but I want to, like, have this network of, like, Black PhDs I know at universities, be it a PWI or HBCU, but sending them to these schools with support in place, be it other students or like Black faculty at these PWIs where they can go get their advanced degrees. Because a lot of HBCUs don't have PhD programs, unfortunately. So, like, of course, we're heading off to PWIs. That's where the PhD programs are.
I looked into that too, because I was looking at different schools in Nashville, and I was like, okay, let me see if they are accepting postdocs at one of the HBCUs. And I was like, oh, they don't even have a PhD program. Oh, got it. Got it. So they aren't doing too much research. So you have a podcast.
I do.
Blk In Grad School. How did that get started?
Yeah, so Blk In Grad School, I started in 2017. What really sowed the seed, I participated in a program called New Leaders Council. It's a progressive training program. So trying to help like 20 to 40-year-old, like early career and mid-career professionals prepare or be equipped with the tools to like make progressive change in their workspace. And even though a lot of people work in politics, there were a couple of us who were like academic or academia bound or in grad school too. And so I did this program, and the very first session, it's a 6-month program. The very first month was about life entrepreneurship and like having a career you love is fulfilling and also feeds you, right? Like money, like the bag.
Literally feeds
And so, right. And so I was like really trying to figure out what that was. Because at the time I've always been side hustling and kind of doing stuff on the side that I enjoyed, but it was so fragmented from my career and like the career I had been like developing. And so it wasn't related to grad school, wasn't related to anything like research related. And I was doing a lot of different stuff, but I had been thinking through this life entrepreneurship program, like, where does these skills align? Like this grad school stuff, I want to do something with that, even though I'm about to leave my job. And like I said, I believe my gift is in teaching, and I enjoy it. It is what I love to do. And then I do this grad school stuff, like this research and this PhD life. So what am I going to do? And I'm a creative. Like I love to create things, and like that's something I enjoy doing and expressing my creativity. And so I don't know, just one day it kind of just popped in my head, I'm going to do something grad school related. I'm like, okay, how can I make it creative? I'm like, oh, I'll just do a podcast. And after my first orientation, I sat down and recorded my feelings, and I was like, okay, I'm going to just keep doing this until something shakes and it makes sense. And then, about 6 or 7 episodes later, I think I finally came up with the name and what it was going to be and what I was going to talk about, what I was going to do each week. And I've been doing it now almost 2 years.
Nice. So how has it been like building outwards from the podcast? Because you don't only podcast, you also do your summit, your grad school summit. So how has that been, like just like doing more than podcasts?
Yeah, hard. Lots of organization. I don't do sleepless nights, so it's I don't do those. But lots of hard work, definitely a lot of sacrifice. I think in the last year, I'm like really been wanting to elevate, and like I've taken it more seriously than I think I did the first year, because first year I was just gonna see if I liked it, and now that I know I enjoy it and I want to keep up with it, that meant I had to spend a little bit less money maybe traveling so that I can invest in an editor or someone to help me with my show notes and my graphics and my social media. So for me, it has looked like, as far as expanding it, me having to kind of slow down my social life, which is okay because I moved to Pittsburgh, and low-key Pittsburgh is not all that. It's like kind of dry. So it's not like it's a hard, like I'm missing out on life, like not going out. So that's really probably been like I don't even think of it as a sacrifice, but that's been the change that I've experienced, is that, these things take time, time to even to do, and then time to grow. And so I've just been, putting in what I can without losing sight of like the bigger goal, which is me getting my PhD, and just hoping that people rock with it.
Do you feel like the podcast has helped you with like staying motivated and on track, and with your time management skills, and help with your grad school experience?
Oh, absolutely. Because I can't do my podcast up till my work is done.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, I got to get my work done because I want to get to the podcast. Or there are days when I am like, F this, I am never coming back, and it's like, well, then what am I going to podcast about? Because I'm talking about my daggone school, I can't really just be like Black and dropped out. I mean, I could, but I don't want to, So I'm trying to encourage people to get to and through. So I got to get to and through too,
So outside of the podcast, is there anything else that keeps you inspired, like through your PhD? It's no walk in the park.
I know, right? Right now, what has been keeping me motivated? That's a loaded question for right now.
Okay.
And this is gonna go off the record, because I was gonna say my grandfather, but he just passed, and so like I don't want to start crying and stuff on your show.
Yeah.
So that's why it's kind of like that. He has been a major motivator, but he's not here no more. So I feel like that's all the time on my podcast. That's why my granddaddies go out, but like I'm so sad. So yeah.
Yeah.
I can't even think of nothing else. That's immediately what came to mind.
Your granddad, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just spoke about it on one of your more recent episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was literally in the dining hall listening to it, and I was emotional. I'm like, oh my God. Like, and that's why I love your podcast so much. So if someone's listening now, please go and subscribe and listen and stay updated on her podcast, especially if you're in grad school. She's very vulnerable, and she shares so much about the experience on being able to balance your life alongside with graduate school. So it's just really amazing to feel like you're a sister who is like willing to share with you her life. In a way that is super authentic. So if you're in grad school or in some type of program, I highly recommend you going and checking it out. So I really appreciate you taking the time out to share your life with us, a little piece of it. And is there any like closing remark you would like to say?
I think for anyone who's thinking about grad school, you can do it. It is hard. Like, I feel like, grad school is hard AF, but it is so doable. It is doable. It's just work, but everything is work. Everything takes hard work. So, if you've been feeling like, oh, I'm not whatever enough, blank enough, you are more than enough to get through this program, get through this degree. And I just want you to be encouraged, know that you can really do whatever you put your mind to.
You're so dope. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You too. It's so sweet.
Don't you just love her? I know. You need to go check out her podcast. If you're not subscribed, you should go subscribe now. If you want to connect with her, she is on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Black, but it's spelled BLK in Grad School. And of course, the links are in the bio. You also go to her website, Blk In Grad School, to connect with me, as always, at theresearcher.com or on the socials at The Research Her. And until next time, I holla.